Hi, everyone. This is Rebecca, and I'm here with my group called Lightworkers Secrets to Success. Today is April. Oh, it's the 12th of April. And we're all here to interview Tom Hayes, who's a very old friend of mine. I met him many years ago, and we've been friends ever since. He is a light worker himself. He's helped an awful lot of people as a motivational speaker. He's been a stand-up comedian. He's been a super successful salesman for a Fortune 500 company for many years. And he writes children's books. He's awesome. He does all kinds of things. And he's going to give us an uplifting talk tonight about, I believe you're going to talk about magic, miracles, and things like that.
Manifestation.
Manifestation, yes. So I will give it over to you, Tom.
Wow. First of all, I was totally honored, taken by surprise yesterday when I was invited. I thought I'd be joining, not to be the center of attention, but to just kind of join a group. And so my mind immediately started to work about what would the topic be. And I used to give an actual speech called Live, Love, Laugh, Learn, and kind of on a 3D level, but still introducing emotional and psychological tools, some manifestation, having a mission, goal setting, all of that. And, as life goes on, and now in this present time, I've kind of evolved to understand that it's, again, magic, manifestation. I forget what the other two are right now, but, we're on, as I struggled with this. First of all, let me tell you how Rebecca and I met. I had, during the 70s and 80s, had learned, was on the tip of everybody's tongue was silver mind control. And it was a best-selling book. It went beyond being a best-selling book. It was, like I say, people were taking the course. It was not unusual to bump into somebody who had taken the course, who was using the course. And so I had always I was curious, because I was curious too about meditation. And one of my good friends took a course in meditation, a week-long course. And ran into people who had taken transcendental meditation, et cetera. But silver seemed to go beyond what most people were doing, especially in terms of the visualization part and manifesting part. And then one day I was doing a comedy show up at a college in Vermont. And when I got through, a gentleman walked into the room, and a lot of my act was actual magic and props, mixture of comedy. And a gentleman walked in and said, do you know a ventriloquist? And I said to him, yeah. I said, what, did you come to the show? I mean, because it would make sense, somebody doing the magical arts and in comedy would somehow sooner or later run into a ventriloquist. And he said, no, I was walking by and something told me to come in and ask you if you knew a ventriloquist. And I said, yeah, I do. That's curious. How did that? Well, he said, I took a course in silver mind control. And he said, I just picked up on the vibe that you'd know. And I thought that was impressive enough. So I said, tell me more about silver mind control. He says, well, I wrote my doctoral. He says, I didn't write my doctoral thesis. I stole my doctoral thesis using silver mind control. He said, there was a technique where I imagined myself on an elevator. I went down floor by floor till I got to the first floor. And then I decided to go beyond into the basement. And this is all in his mind. He says, when I got to the basement, there was a long corridor, and at the end was a door. I walked to the door, I opened the door, and it was a huge library with beings, entities sitting around the table. And they knew why I was there. He said, so they went over, pulled a book off the shelf, put it on the table, and the title was exactly what I needed. He says, I knew there was a missing piece to the study that I was doing, and this was it. So that impressed me enough. But then they would open the book, and I literally went down there every day and copied my entire thesis. So obviously now I'm really driven to find out, but it took almost 20, 30 years till I finally saw an ad for Rebecca's course. And so we connected, and that was over 16 years ago. And here we are. And and along the way, all kinds of miracles, manifestations, miracles, and mindset. That's one of the other M's I want to talk about tonight, because that's extremely important today, is people's mindset. And so I started to learn. We got really involved in, both Rebecca and I, in a lot of discussions about the law of attraction. And both of us saw, in Rebecca's case, especially is written in her book, she manifested some amazing things along the way, as I did. And I started to get a little overboard with it, thinking that this was the answer to life. And all it was going to be was one beautiful manifestation at the other. But then, as in Rebecca's book, which I recommend highly, she tells the tale in a way that really is true, that blessed with all of these gifts, along the way, we still have the challenges. We still have the ups and downs. We gain it, we lose it, we come back. But with those tools, we are much better equipped on how to deal with all this. And then deeper truths keep coming with that. And we've encountered certain gurus along the way that we show up. And one of the major turning points for us was the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And so Rebecca is one of those, what I called, Steve Jobs did a great one in his presentation at Stanford. He talked about connecting the dots, which I think is one of the most incredible concepts and methodologies that I had never heard in all the readings in philosophy and spirituality. He said, when you look forward, you will never know where the dots in your life connect. When you look back, he said, all of a sudden it makes sense. And you will understand how each dot led to the other. And so tonight, all of the dots that I connected with in my life took us to this moment, with all of us as little dots sharing this part of our lives. But the reason that Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil hit us is both Rebecca and I were getting to the point where we're starting to understand not everybody is awake. And we struggled with that, because we have to live in a world with non-awake beings, and they're challenging every single day. And so Napoleon Hill, basically, are you all familiar with the book?
Oh yeah, we did a book study on
great.
that.
Okay, so you know what he says. He says that the devil is nothing more than a negative field, and the job of the devil is to counterbalance the positive. And he presents all of the temptations, and things like drugs, alcohol, despair, drama, all of the things to keep us from the things we want. And the only way to, and it's amazing that he gave, he divulged tips on how to stay the course. And yet he says, don't ever quit, things like that. But what got shocking in the book was that part about there's only 2%, he called them drifters and non-drifters. And he said that the world is full of drifters, 98%, and only 2% are actually non-drifters. And he said, Napoleon Hill asked him, he says, well, can you entice them with your temptations? He said, only when they get successful. He says, then, he says, they have enough money and enough time that I can entice them and get them to come over as well. So it was an absolutely, amazing tool for enlightenment of like, wow, this is what we're up against. And so it's helped in some ways, but I think what we're seeing today, and this is why mindset is extremely important today, because I don't know if how insulated all of you are, but I have still lots of friends. And last summer, I got lots of phone calls from people that I thought were just trying to catch up. But no, they had an agenda, and they wanted to fight politics. And I warned them that I knew a little bit more about what they wanted to talk about, because I lived in the neighborhoods. Well, basically, I grew up in a black neighborhood for 18 years of my life. And I said, experientially, I understand a lot more than the normal person. And then the debate would continue, and I would call Rebecca up and say, these people are driving me crazy. And and we would talk about what they were discussing. And then I started to realize it was deeper than that, that I've been reading a lot of books about screenplay. And one of the great screenwriters, a guy named McKee. And McKee wrote a book on dialogue that was about this thick. And to think that you could write that many chapters and pages about one particular aspect of screenwritings. But it was a brilliant psychological study, because he said, what people discuss in dialogue is a surface. There's 3 levels. There's what's going on the surface, which is what I'm doing right now. Underneath, I am also there's a dialogue in my head of what I'm ready to present. Okay, but below that, with all of us, and all of us are having that second dialogue, below that is a level that we don't even understand. It's the subconscious. The subconscious is driving us in a way that we can't comprehend. So I said to people who started to call, I said, listen, that isn't why you called. You called because you have a certain mindset. And before we can begin to talk, I'd like to find out what your mindset is. And I started to ask questions. Do you see the world as a bountiful place, a platform in which you can take everything about you, your physical presence, your spiritual presence, your emotional presence, your creative powers, to use that platform to create things to not only enhance yourself, but to enhance the world and to enhance everybody else? Or do you see the world as fixed? Now, what shocked me about that, for the past 2 years, I've been living in probably the best relationship of my life. Not probably, is the best relationship of life. And she has a son that's 13. And I started to discuss this, and Pauline, my significant other, said, oh, they're teaching that in the schools. I said, what? She says, yeah, it's called fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And I was really shocked with that because Rebecca and I talk a lot. We don't have a lot of faith in the conventional educational system, but it's starting to manifest this idea that there are 2 major mindsets in the world. And so what we're seeing is in this conflict every single day, we're seeing a clash of that mindset. Are we limited, or are we expansive? Are you empowered? Are you powerless? Do you have a can-do attitude, or do you have a can't attitude? Is the glass half full? And is the glass? And so going back to Outwitting the Devil, only about 2% of us, maybe a few more, have a growth mindset. And we are being constantly attacked. And there's a movement to take everything politically and move toward the fix. Because I would say to people, well, I think you see wealth has already created. Whatever is created is all there is. And hence, in order to get a piece of that wealth, the only way that somebody can take a piece of it is to take it, not make it, but to take it or break it. And that's what we're starting to see in America today. So with that, I will take some questions, but that's where I think we as light workers, that is the mindset that we can kindle in people and say, what do you want to do with your time on this life, on this planet? What do you want to do with that? Do you want to settle for a life of conflict, of anger, that things are fixed, only the rich have it? What I can't stand to hear is they can't. Everybody has this trigger. They can't. If the system is against them. And what I started to see for a point of self-discovery for myself, not only did I grow up in a Black neighborhood, and people say, well, I have Black friends. No, I had really good friends. We didn't even make distinctions in color. We ate in each other's homes. We slept in each other's homes. We we were integrated in a common, we were in a poor area, and we all faced the struggle, economic struggle. And we learned, yeah, there was conflict, but you learned you had to survive. Well, at 5 years after that, I would spend at least 3 to 4 nights a week in a black nightclub called the Sugar Shack in Boston. And it was the most exciting place I had ever been. And so much so that I spent the last 5 years, I had it as a mindset, a goal, that I would make a movie about that experience. Because in the club, there was never, it was 80% black, 20% white, and there was never, ever an incident of racial tension or conflict. And the reason was the music was so beautiful, the music was so harmonious that it put everybody into a beautiful state. So for the last 5 years, I've been doing a documentary about that club. And I've traveled all over the country interviewing people like what's left of the Temptations, what's left of the Stylistics, Earth, Wind and Fire, individual artists, and the OJs.
Gladys Knight.
The OJs. I got to interview Frankie Valli for 45 minutes, and we talked about the music, and it's the same thing. And then it hit me. So my mindset again is, let's get away from the conflict. Let's think of harmony. How can we now introduce a concept that will bring us together? And then it also hit me again in this because I was so irritated by it. I couldn't, Rebecca kept saying, don't get excited about this, but I couldn't help it because it was hitting at the inner core of everything I believe. And I said, wait a minute. For 14 years, almost 16, I've been going to inner city schools. Okay, a Black woman got a hold of me and asked me if I would join her program, and it was called If They Made It, So Can I. And her purpose was, she started the program when her son was in the 5th grade and he was being bullied. And she knew that she had to go above and beyond the existing curriculum within the school. And so she wanted to bring in people who had, in her terms, had made it as an example and tell their stories. And she brought in policemen, she brought in people in the army, she brought in executives, she brought in bakers, people, small entrepreneurs, and they would tell their story. And so she was interested in my story, and I went in and I tell my story. I tell how I lost my leg at the age of 13 in the same neighborhood that they're living in now. And even though I had white skin and white privileged, I was now what the world or the society considered disabled. And I overcame all of that. I didn't let that hold me back. I didn't let my economic situation hold me back. And I made it. So I started to understand why this fixed mindset, this can't mindset disturbs me so much, because one of the things in the last couple of ideas I thought about, there was a big movement about being disabled where across the country, barrier-free became a battle cry to take away the barriers, physical barriers. For example, they put on inclines and sidewalks so people who were in wheelchairs could get in. They made ramps instead of stairs so handicapped people or disabled people could do it. So I thought about it. I said, my entire life has been about overcoming barriers, breaking down barriers to get ahead, to actualize. And I said, that's what I teach these kids. And I told Rebecca, I said, I thought COVID would be the end of it, but she called me a couple of weeks ago and said, I'd like you to do another one through Zoom. And the only Zoom experience I had was with Adam. So I was a little unfamiliar with the technology. And I was really afraid because I didn't know how I could convey my personality, how I would interact with the kids, what would happen. And I thought at most I could only do 15 minutes. And about an hour and a half into it, I realized some of the power of this technology. Unlike a classroom, a live classroom, there's always 2 or 3 kids who are eager to answer, eager to communicate. The rest of them, you've got introverts, they're shy, then they don't have the confidence. And so I would never hear from those kids. And these kids would monopolize the whole time. Well, all of a sudden, I don't have that problem because we're dealing with the screen. And then the teacher said, he warned me, he told me these kids are exceptional because I had trouble with his class the last time. It was pretty disruptive. And he said, they're exceptional. And he said, okay, I'm going to open this up to questions. And all of a sudden, ping, 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 and again, I don't know what's going on. I'm seeing everybody ping me, ping, 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 because I said to them, what you have to understand that inside every one of you, there is a power, there is a source that you don't understand, that if you rely on that and you go to that in times of trouble, you will get assistance like you will never be. Problems will be solved. And all of a sudden, I start seeing pings. You're talking about God. These are 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds. You're talking about God. Ping, Jesus be praised. Bing, 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 bing. And I'm going, my God, here are these inner city kids, 10 years old. And now I understand why he said these were exceptional kids. Somebody's teaching them the world of spirit. Somebody's teaching them about the intangibles. And so it became, the 15 minutes turned into an hour and a half with continual questions, wanting to know specifics of how I overcame my physical disability, how I started. I also right now have an animation company, and I started a toy company. And so they were extremely interested in that. So in the context of my own personal story, trying to bring it to where we are today, I think all of us are just amazed and bewildered. I am, and Rebecca and I talk every day. We've never, in all our time on the planet, have never seen anything like this. The 60s were difficult, but this is really, really, it's too much to try to even comprehend. So, okay, I'll shut up. But that's who I am. That's where I am, and how I got there.
Well, Tom, I mean, you said so much, and you and I have had so many deep conversations already like this. And I mean, we could probably easily talk for about 4 hours between the both of us, just going back and forth and having these conversations. And, you said so many awesome things. Outwitting the Devil is probably one of my all-time favorite books. I think I've read it once or twice, and I think I've listened to it on audio probably like 30 or 40 times, no exaggeration whatsoever. And Napoleon Hill maps it out exactly for mankind, or for anyone to find it, to really know, and this might cause some controversy, but he talks about religion, and he says the devil, that's his greatest tool, is religion, because organized religion. Yeah, organized religion, right? And he talks about how he uses that to his advantage, and he uses the fear behind it. Well, if you do this, God's going to be angry. Well, first of all, God's not angry with you. I mean, we're here to figure it out, and we're here on a journey. So I could go on and on and on with Outwitting the Devil, and the 2%. And I think it's chapter 8 when he talks about the educational system, and you were sort of touching base on that. And I just pause and wonder just for a moment, if the evil cabal, Illuminati, whatever they are, instead of guiding us down this evil, dirty, dark path, if instead they gave us the tools just to have the education on how we could make this heaven on earth, and how we could make this a much different place, instead of having fossil fuels, using different technologies, instead of all these things that cause all these problems, which can easily be fixed like that, they don't want them to be fixed. And they do everything in their power to make it worse and to keep guiding us down the wrong direction, no matter what. Doesn't matter if they have to kill, doesn't matter what it is, they will do it to guide us down the wrong path. And all we have to do is just open our eyes. And, I was just thinking about this today is, for those of you that have watched the movie The Wizard of Oz, and maybe not everyone has, what's the one thing at the end when Dorothy gets to the end? Well, you've always had the power. All you had to do was click your heels 3 times and you'd be back.
I just saw it a month ago in the big screen.
Right.
And I said, oh my God, what was his name? The author, I said, he totally got it. He says, you've got it all along, you don't need somebody else. And she just didn't have the belief or the confidence to get herself back. She says, you could have gone home, and where is home? Home is heaven.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We have the ability to escape out of this matrix. And, we've been all waiting for, like a lot of us, Donald Trump or the Pleiadians or, the galactic count, whatever it is, everyone's kind of waiting on when's this ascension going to happen? Well, you can ascend at any time you want. You just say you want to ascend, believe it, and it happens. Like, I mean, I was just listening to a person on YouTube yesterday, and she was talking about this very thing. And I got it. I'm like, well, what am I waiting for? I've got the key in my hand to my own cell. No one's holding me in here except for me. I just need to unlock the door and just go. And when I'm ready to go, then I'll go. For whatever reason, I got something I still want to solve here. So I know you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours about this subject.
Well, if you guys asked me here, and there are some things that I'm honored, and I think there's some things that on a path that may move a lot of you ahead by my own personal experience. And you talked about we're looking for the next Messiah. We're looking, and Rebecca always, where we disagree at times, she says, "Why do you care? Why don't you just stop?" And I can't, because that spirit of mine is a fighter, is a warrior. In fact, I was thinking today, you told me you saw angels around me a few weeks ago. And when I was going through all kinds of alternative therapies, et cetera, and energy work, et cetera. And one time they would continually tell me, your archangel is Michael, and Michael is a warrior, they would describe the sword, et cetera. And so there's that part. And Rebecca, knowing that she loves me, keeps saying, well, they killed Christ. They killed Socrates. They killed Martin Luther. What do you want to do? Get killed? Well, I can't stop that fighting spirit. And I started to learn, again, I think one of the problems with the law of attraction was that, first of all, it works. And Rebecca and I found also another teacher, a guy by the name of Scheinfeld. And he had some very interesting things to say. And one of them, he said that if the law of attraction was a law, it would work every single time. And that was the first time that I started to investigate that. So it's almost illusionary in a sense, because sometimes it just will blow your mind what will manifest. And so I got a little cocky with that. I thought that all I had to do was do what I was doing to see these things, and I got knocked on my ass. I lost everything. And I didn't just lose all my money. I was $300,000 in debt, okay, in trouble with the IRS, credit card companies, banks, and I was ready to lose even more. And for years, when I would go to the bookstores, I would always go to the spiritual section, and something would always happen where the Course in Miracles would always appear. I would reach for a book and somehow grab the Course in Miracles. And it was so like this, and I'm going, this just looks like too much work. It's the Bible, blah, blah, blah. No. Well, again, through an amazing miracle, it got put right in my face where I couldn't ignore it. And I had just lost everything. And I knew innately, the voice was telling me, this happened for a reason. You needed this. You needed to be humbled. You needed to understand there is more to this than the law of attraction. And so I did, for 2 years, I did I had nothing to do. I lost my company, I lost my family, I lost everything. And so I had time to do all of the workshops twice. I went through it twice and I did all the meditations. I followed through, and I found out slowly that, just as the Course in Miracles says, there is only two choices. Marianne Williams says there's only two choices in life: love or fear. And there's always, always only one problem: separation from source. And I said, my God, so now how did I get to put this in practice? Well, all of a sudden, I'm behind in my mortgage payments. And I have no money. I don't have employment. I have nothing. And I'm screwed. I'm just, this is it. This is it. I'm done. And I said, I can't solve this. For the first time in my life, I couldn't pick myself up and come up with $300,000, nor could I come up with the payments to keep my house. And I said, well, I'll have to go back to work. And then I said, I'd rather die. And I meant it. Rather than get up in the way that I knew how to go back to work, which was in a corporation with all of its laws and regulations. And I said, it's not worth it. So I sat down and I had a connection. I made my connection to source. I said, I can't solve this. This is yours. I'll accept wherever this goes. And then the miracle started. You know, I got modification after modification, stories that people would never, ever begin to comprehend. And I started.
You were calling me every now and then going, you're not going to believe what happened. You're the only one I can tell it to because no one will believe me.
One of the more outstanding one is every mortgage. I had 3 mortgages. 2 of them got solved. The last one would not forgive. I owed them $60,000 because it was it wasn't a conventional mortgage. It was a loan against it was a loan. And they wouldn't do it. I was I was 2 weeks or less under people. Every day I had to lose. The worst pain was watching the carpetbaggers move in. These real estate agents would jump out of their car and take pictures of my house because the auction was already set. And I'm just going, oh, this is it. And still just saying, okay, you've got another part. There's another part to this journey. If this is what happens, happens. 2 days before, my brother walks in the house with a $60,000 check. He had just settled my father's estate. It didn't look like it was going to happen in time. We drove up to the mortgage company, handed them the check, and until Rebecca, again, the dots, this summer, Rebecca said to me, you got to get out of there, meaning the city, meaning Boston. And she didn't even give me a chance to debate her. She immediately called her real estate friend. And the next thing, this guy's on the line. And I'm like, and we used the joke. I said, there's a great joke that a guy is in a flood and the flood is coming up to his first floor. And all of a sudden he goes out onto the porch and a rowboat comes by and the guy says, jump in. And he says, no, he says, I've already asked God to help me. God's going to save me. And then the waters get more and it goes to the second floor and a motorboat comes by and the guy says, get in. He goes, no, I got it covered. God's going to save me. The last scene, he's on the roof. A helicopter comes by and he says, no, God saved me. He drowns. He goes to heaven. He meets God and says, where were you? He says, you idiot. I sent you help 3 times. Okay. So I had been telling Rebecca, I said, boy, I am receiving unemployment, which would last till January. I said, boy, another miracle is going to happen in January. I know it. And so here she comes in July and she shows up with a rowboat. She says, get in. And I just had no idea how to do this. She calls her real estate friend and boom. And now the next phase of my life. But again, that dot, think about that dot of, all the way along, silver mind control, because you see what's happening is, it's like Alan Watts says, this is a big game. Life is a game and it's a story. And part of the game is the Godhead, who's this omnipotent being that can have anything it wants, this energy source. It can manifest anything on it. He says, but it gets bored with that. Hence the game, to fall into the world, create a game in which you're under the illusion that you're powerless. But along the game, there are signposts telling you who you really are, telling you that you are an omnipotent being, that, as Joel Osteen says, you are a child of the Most High God.
Mhm.
And that's what we start to learn, is that if we access that power, instead of jumping into fear and blocking it, then along the way comes Rebecca, who says, didn't give you a choice, because the next day the guy was on the phone saying, and he's very powerful, and he just convinced me it was the way to go. And then you really start to learn to surrender. And the ultimate lesson came from the Course in Miracles, which was, and other books that we've talked about, especially the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, who wrote the Legend of Bagger Vance, which I would recommend to anybody because it's an amazingly spiritual movie and about connecting with the source and connecting with the field. And he says basically it's very much like the Outwitting the Devil. Between us and what we desire in life is a thing called resistance, and it's real. And it shows up in drugs and alcohol and drama and too much sex or whatever. It takes you off the path to your real power. And he says, however, the only way to do it is to go to work every single day. And so the formula becomes, you do the work, you let go, and you trust. And I started to realize that there's a huge difference between faith and trust. Huge. Because I can have faith, for an example, that the babysitter in the neighborhood is a great babysitter. I see her with other kids. Everybody uses her. She's a great person. But until I give her my kid, we're not talking faith anymore. I'm trusting her with my child. So I started to learn, we have to, if we're going to really get there, we have to surrender. You have to trust. Mm-hmm. It's not about faith. It's not believing. It's giving yourself to the power and trusting that you're here for a reason and you will be taken to those beautiful places you're supposed to be.
Exactly.
And now I will shut up.
You guys can see why we can talk for hours like this. Can you just imagine like Tom and I on a call together? Because they all know how I am and they now see how you are. Like, I mean, easily like an hour would be gone like that. Like, I mean, we've already been talking, I don't know, 41 minutes or something. And Tom, you're just so insightful. You say so many, empowering things. The whole surrender thing, I'm learning more and more and more about that every day that we go on. I was literally on a call with Tom, one of the first times I ever met him. So just kind of put yourself in this scenario. And all of a sudden I see all these orbs flying around him. And finally, after about, I don't know, and I'm not even exaggerating this, about 20 orbs, I say, Tom, what's going on with you, man? You've got all these orbs, all these angels around you right now. Like something is going on. And I like, do you see them like in front of your face? And he's like, no. And I can see him through a freaking Zoom screen right now. And like, anyways, Tom, you're just so full of this energy and passion. And I'm going to turn it over to Pamela or Colette and you guys ask some questions. Cause I mean, I could go on for hours and hours and hours talking like this to Tom.
Nobody?
Yeah, they got questions. Don't worry. I know they do. They got to unmute. Go ahead, Pamela. Unmute.
I was working on it. My Zoom wasn't cooperating. It's like so many. Where to begin? I fell into this thing of just listening. Really enjoyed your conversation. What would you say? I mean, you've had so many different experiences and so many different blessings to touch people's lives. What would you say would be, if you like, I know you're talking to kids a lot, what would you give them if you could only give them one piece of advice or one thing for them to strive towards, what would that be?
Well, they, I try to lead everybody through steps to this final concept of surrender and trust. That the illusion is part of the game. The illusion is that you're an ego. And, I found Alan Watts through another miracle. I mean, I just realized, I mean, the lecture that I was in my 20s, I had gone to a Catholic school, that college that made us take philosophy and theology every semester, required courses. And I loved it. And so I had lots of Western philosophy. And I turn the radio on, I hear this great, if you've never heard him, oh, he's a joy. Rebecca and I talk about him all the time. He's got this, he's dead now, but he was so entertaining, had this beautiful British voice. And so the first thing, I turn the radio on, I hear this voice saying, "Who do you think you are?" And I'm like, the hell is this? Where do you begin and where do you end? And I'm like, who is this guy? Do you end at your fingertips? Do you end at your toes? Where do you end? Where do you begin and where do you end? Who do you think you are? And now he's got me. And I had never heard anything in all of philosophy or theology where he was going. He said, let me ask a question. How long could you survive without water? How long could you survive without food? How long could you, if the sun all of a sudden disappeared, how long would you last? Maybe 3 days? Who do you think you are? He said, you're a Western man and you think you're an ego wrapped in skin. That is a very limited concept of yourself because you're connected to everything. And I think that's the big danger today is nobody comprehends that each one of us are so intricately connected to each other that this idea of separateness, again, what's the biggest problem? Separation from your source. So, and that was, I realize now, looking back on that dot, that was a major turning point in my life, that concept that I'm connected to everything. And Martin Luther King talked about it so beautifully in one of his things about that little tea bag that you put in your cup, you could not have unless somebody had picked the tea leaves and somebody had shipped it to you. You're not independent. There's this big, weird thinking right now that you're independent and free. Nobody is independent. We're all dependent. But the big miracle came for me was when I lost my leg. And nobody told me it was cancer. They told me, and the cancer that I had was called osteosarcoma. And in those days, there was no chemotherapy. In those days, any child who got that, if 100 kids got it, 95 died. Okay, that's how lethal it is. To this day, only 50% survive at best, like flipping a coin. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not a gambler. I wouldn't bet on 20 to 1 odds about my life. And I made some very existential questions and decisions when the doctor came in. First of all, I was shocked. I had been in the hospital for a month, and all of a sudden, it was a Saturday morning. It was right about this time of year. The trees were starting to bud, and in walked about my surgeon, and walked about 4 or 5 residents, interns, nurses. They filled the room, and I guess this was like a advanced class. How do you tell a kid, 13-year-old kid, he's going to lose his leg? And then my parents were there, and I was like, oh, something's up. They're not telling me that the Red Sox don't have a chance for the pennant this year. And so the doctor looks at me and says, I got some news for you, Tom. We're going to have to remove your leg. And I laughed because at 13 years of age, that can't happen. That happens in the movies when a pilot gets shot down in the war and they have to take his leg off. So I started to laugh, and I looked around and nobody's laughing. And when I saw my parents crying, I went, uh-oh, I'm in some deep shit here. So I always tell this story to the kids, and they get fascinated by it because I said, I started to cry. They're going, how did you feel? I said, I cried, obviously. And I says, but I started to bargain. And this is very important because there's a lot of lessons here. So I asked the kids, I said, what did I start to bargain with? And they come up with it. You see, it's so much of the Socratic method. The kids know the answers already. And the kids started saying, you asked them, how long could you live if you didn't take the leg off? And I said, exactly. I said, so I started to bargain. I said, and I picked an age. What age did I pick? And the kids every single time picked the same age from the perspective of a 13-year-old. They said 40. And I said, yes. I said to them, can I live to the age of 40? And I said, why did I pick 40? And the kids always tell me, because they're old. They're old when they're 40. I said, boy, your parents wouldn't like to hear this. I said, good point. I said, what makes them old? They have to work. And I said, are they happy? They goes, no, I want them happy. They have to work. Why else aren't they happy? Because they have bills. I said, good. I said, why else? I says, I'll tell you the third one, because they have you. And then they laugh. So I said, but you're right, because it doesn't look like life is much fun after 40, does it? No. I said, okay, so he told me no, I couldn't live to 40. What age did I pick next? And they goes, 30. I said, good, that's the age I picked. Why? I says, do 30-year-olds still have fun? Yeah. 30-year-olds are having fun. And he says, he told me no. So what did I take? He goes, 20. He told me no. And I said, it got down to 2 years. I'm begging him for, can I live 2 years if you don't take the leg off? Boy, I would have been really pissed at myself if I had made that deal. And he says, not even 2 years. So then I asked him another question. And the first one was, I'm very fast as a runner. Can I run? He said, no. As a kid, I could. And he said, no. And then can I walk? Yes. And then I had just received a brand new bicycle. And I said, can I ride a bike? Now, here's a 55-year-old surgeon, Mass General, Harvard trained, world renowned, says to me, impossible. Don't try it. Now, the reason is they had to take my leg off at the hip. So they were afraid that if I fell on that side, I would have nothing to stop me. I'd probably hit my head and die. So they warned me it was impossible not to try it. And they used those terms, you'll die. So with this fear, but what they didn't account for was my desire. And I saw my brother riding my bicycle every day and I got pissed. And he'd get off the bike, I'd grab the bike, and it was fun because, and the kids get a big kick out of this, they would run from my parents. The mothers were home in those days. So every single mother would run out of the house and physically pull me off the bike. And I said, was I mad that they came? And they would go, yeah. I go, no. I said, I was happy because I was getting all this attention and I was afraid. And they pulled me off. I didn't have to make the decision. I couldn't overpower them. Well, I said, one day they didn't come. And if it was the first day I heard, no, it was about the second or third time I heard the voice, the little voice in the back of the head. I'm all alone and I'm going, this is no fun. There's no drama here. There's no conflict. Now I have to make the decision. Do I go for it? Or do I get off? And, what do I lose? Lose face now? I had that opportunity to do it. And the voice started, ride the bike. And it was not a feint. It was, and it didn't say it once. It said it 3 or 4 times. What are you waiting for? Ride the bike, push off the curb. And I had a 3-speed pedal at that time. So it wasn't, unlike an American bike that when it was the brake, I could go. So I reached down, picked it up, pushed, and I'm off. And oh my God, I was like, I'm free. Freedom, because now I'm not limited by, when all the other kids took off on their bicycles, I couldn't go. And now I'm free. And it was a scene out of Forrest Gump. I'm going down the street and the mothers are now coming out of the houses. They must have been all on party phones. And they're coming down in their little house coats and they're running down the street after me. You'll get off the bike. You'll die. You'll die. And now, I'm free and I'm laughing because they can't even catch me. And they all stopped. And they realized they saw a miracle. And I tell the kids, if anybody tells you that something is impossible, they're lying to you because they don't know what you're capable of. Nobody knows what you can do when you go to the deepest part of you. And so that was imagine at 13 having that, overcoming this Harvard trained physician who's world renowned and proving him wrong. I drove the bicycle into his office. I was a little wise ass even then. And he was not happy with me. He was not happy. He said, so what? He said, you better still, he wanted me to use this instead of my physical way to make money. And he was right about that. But that's a very powerful thing for a 13-year-old to demonstrate. And then what happened was the hospitals, nobody taught me. And I wanted to tell this story, so it's going to really lead to a beautiful story. They, the doctors, the physiatrists, the physical therapists were blown away. This is Boston. This is the medical mecca of the world at the time, Mass General. They started taking Super 8 movies of me and showing them all over the country. Look what this kid did. What was happening in those days, you took, somebody was disabled, you didn't see them. There was no Paralympics. There was, you were put away. You were hidden. You saw an exceptional situation, not like today. And so they would have me go in and talk to residents. Like, how did you do this? You know, and so I was teaching at the age of 14 or 15. I'm teaching doctors, residents, how I went through this process. So I explained this. I tell the story every time to these children, and I learned so much. Every time I do a lecture to these kids, I learned more than I went into. I'm transformed. So I said to the kids, okay, did anybody here have to, I taught myself how to ride a bike. Did anybody ever teach themselves something? This little black girl, 11 years old, stands up. She goes, yeah, man, I taught myself how to walk. And I said, that's nice. I said, so you were sick or you had an accident, so you taught yourself how to walk? And she goes, no, man, the first time. I looked at this kid. I looked at the teacher. I didn't know what to say. This kid's a genius. This kid is tapped into innate wisdom. Nobody teaches us how to walk. If all the little soccer moms with their vans could find a little strip mall where they taught walking classes, they'll all be there to bring out that my kid walked first. Nobody's walking until that little thing inside us says, do it. Today we walk. Mm-hmm. And we have no control over that. And that thing is there from the beginning. I tell people, look at a kid, put food on a table and look at an infant. Watch what he does. Boom, immediately to this food, immediately to that food. The innate wisdom, that thing that's in us is running the show. It's like it's in there with all these controls and we're going through the motions. And it's only when you separate yourself from it and this gets too big that we get lost.
And that's why you're an awesome motivational speaker. And you've helped so many people, and especially young people, with your message.
Oh, and to see again, I kept saying, why am I so angry when people tell me this knee-jerk reaction? It's this knee-jerk belief now, this mindset. We can't. It goes against everything that I know, that we all know. We can.
Yeah. Right. What's the famous Einstein quote? One of the famous ones. He says, "We were all born geniuses and taught to be idiots."
It's true. It's so true. They prove the kids at 5 are so creative. By the time they're 6 or 7 or 8, they've taken all the creativity away. Color within the lines. Yeah. We're going to give you the information. You give it back to us.
Yep. Yep. Colette, you got any empowering questions for Tom? This is so much here.
I do. I know we're almost at time though, but I wanted to ask you, since you have started several successful businesses, do you have any tips for people? Because our channel is Lightworkers Secret to Success. So, so tips for people starting a business or wanting to get the word out? How do you take the magic and miracles and the surrender and apply that to like creating something, like to creating a business?
Well, I always say to people, they tell me, I want this. And I'll tell people, say, I want a Mercedes, or I want this big house. And I go, okay, good. That's great. Okay. Where did that idea come from? Well, my friend has a Mercedes. I really like the Mercedes. And I go, you're probably not going to get it. I go, but if you do get it, you're probably not going to have it very long. And I go, what are you talking about? I said, when you tell me that you have to do something, and I ask you the question, why? And you say to me, I don't know. Then you're going to get it, because that thing inside you is driving you to that. And I've heard that more and more. People, I don't know why, but I have to do this. So when, one of the things of the saying of the property I created, we have a magical world of beans that came from magic beanstalk. And the motto is, use your bean, trust your heart, use your gut. So if the idea comes from your gut and it's your passion, not if I do this, the worst trap is if I do this, I can make a lot of money. You're screwed because you'll give up. One of the parts I got to, and I'm so mad at myself, because what the heck is his name? He wrote a book, Start With Why. He's a big motivational speaker right now.
Simon Sinek.
Who is it?
Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
I was teaching that 30 years ago when I was teaching sales. They would give me a class that had to be retrained. They were going to give them couple of more weeks, and they were going to fire them. So they gave them one last shot at training. And I learned that all the tricks I taught them, all of the techniques, they didn't work. All the goal setting didn't work. And I said, something's wrong. So one day I said to them, and this I hope answers your question. I said, take an index card, and I want you to write on why you get up every morning and why you do this job. I don't care what the answer is. You have to answer it yourself. And I don't care if it's, I don't know, or if it's, I like it. I said, but that is what will get success. And I said, I want you to keep that over the visor. And every time you get rejected, every time you get a setback, you pull that down and you remind yourself why you want this, why you get up and do this. That will take, and I said to people, when 9/11 happened, I said to people, who would you rather fight? Somebody who has a goal or somebody who has a mission? Because you see, a goal answers the question, what? A mission answers the question, why? So they drove planes into buildings for Allah. You can easily, if you're at the top of a hill and people are coming up to take it, you give them a good shot in the head or a leg or something, and that's just a goal, they're going back down. But if they're going to take the mountain for Allah, they're not stopping. So you have to have that thing, that unknown desire. I don't know why, because that's the higher self saying, we're going to do this. Not to mean that it's just going to happen. You're going to get, and that's the game, you see, because you're going to fail along the way. And what's the course of, Outwitting the Devil say, failure is the key to success. In every failure, those are the keys to success. So if you're going to undertake a business, you have to know that more than anything, you have to do this. And it doesn't matter if you know why or not. In fact, it's better if you don't know why. Most of my businesses showed up. I retired at 52. I was set for life. I was financially free for life. I was going to go fishing, but the universe had something else to do. And all of a sudden, bam, this business showed up in the most ridiculous, miraculous ways. And took me along for the ride, and took me to a point where it took everything from me, took all my money and more. And I said, and I wouldn't change any of it, because the ride was unbelievable. And guess what? It's still not over. Every single day I get up impassioned to find a new way to make it go. And so I guess does that seem to answer the question? You know, listen, you know, when I was driving for Uber, I took Steve Jobs' address from Stanford and I put it on a business card. I said, my time is limited. I am not wasting it living somebody else's life. He said, I will not let the thoughts and opinions of other people drown out my own inner voice. He said, looking forward in your life, you do not know where the dots will connect, but something, the universe, your intuition, God, whatever you want, it knows. So what you have to do, again, you have to trust that it knows and that it will take you to where you want to go. So I would give these out, and the area I was living in was all millennials. And I'd hear the silence, they'd read it and they go, that's a really good quote, man. They go, but they go, how do you hear that voice? I said, you got to shut shit off. You got to get quiet. You're never going to do it on this. You're never going to do it with this. You're never going to do it with this. If you keep throwing noise in, it can't get through the noise. You got to get quiet and get comfortable with that quiet, because that's when it talks to you. Like when I'm on that bike and it was quiet and it says, here we go. You know, if that voice didn't happen, I probably never would have ridden that bike. I needed that coaching. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if Rebecca didn't show up, I would have never sold my house. I'd be broke.
That's true. Yeah. And this was a great conversation.
Well, thank you. And as you can tell, it's what Rebecca and I talk about this. It's what we don't have a choice. We came here to do this. For us to sit back.
Light workers are here at this time. All of us are light workers, and we're all here for a reason.
Let me ask all of you, could you just sit down and binge on movies for the rest of your life? No, we're possessed. We are possessed.
Yeah.
And there's a joy that comes. One of the best joys, you know, writing is so difficult, but there was a great book called Writing Down Your Soul, because there's a magic that happens when you're doing longhand in a journal. It's so meditative. And you start to connect with the divine. You'll find thoughts it starts talking to, and they materialize on the paper. This is what all great artists do.
Yeah.
You're so right about getting clear and you know, just centering. And you know, that's what Steve Jobs did. I mean, he would go 6 months at a time, he would go and meditate, and in meditation he actually designed that entire iPhone, the first iPhone, in meditation. Like he dreamt it. And I mean, if you just read a little bit, I mean, Steve Jobs isn't the best guy in the world. He's kind of a dick on some of the things he did, but still, I mean, there's a lot of valuable lessons that he left behind if you really know his life.
He's one of the best. He's one of the greatest 20th century philosophers. You know, you're right. He was not necessarily, he had a lot of quirks. He did some pretty bad things, some, you know, I mean, but he showed the world, you know, I mean, this guy starts in a garage.
I'm sitting here with all of his equipment.
They're the first, he created the first $1 trillion business, folks.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not like Bill Gates, it's not like Bill Gates in the fakeness that they did and they slipped them in as CEO. I mean, this guy really designed it. He designed it so well that Microsoft even stole it, and they were in court for years. And
his favorite book was Autobiography of a Yogi. Everyone got one at his funeral, copy of it.
Yep. And read books. A great book if you're going to start your business. Read Russell Simmons. Do You, the creator of hip hop. It's a great story. And he basically says, do you, you know, he's a great yoga. He practices yoga all the time, lives it, you know, and he's a multi-millionaire with millions of businesses. And he walks you through what he experienced, his process of following that and believing and trusting. And that's what's going to do it. And you got to take the chance. You have to be bold. And because if you're looking for the safe way, then don't do it. But who wants the safe way, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just want to go through life safely to death, or would you rather have an amazing experience in the journey?
I get banged up, lose a leg, get back up, ride a bicycle, start a business, lose money. It's all a lesson, and you get stronger. I'm doing a biography about one of my millionaire friends, and we came through Roxbury together. He was poor. He was abject poverty. And I found the perfect quote. The hardest, the toughest steel goes through the hottest fires. That's how you make the strongest steel. You put the flames up, you take it out, you bang it, you put it back in, and you bang it, and it just doesn't apply to steel. It's like you gotta be ready for the ride, but knowing that you're gonna be okay. You see, that's the part you have to understand. No matter how you get banged up, unless it's your time to go, and who's to say what that's about. But that thing that made the little girl get up, man, the first time, the thing that makes the kid pick out just the right foods for itself, that thing is there constantly driving you forward to live this amazing adventure. And I think that's
divine intervention always steps in at the 11th hour.
Unbelievable. And it does, it waits, it tortures you.
Yeah.
You will think, and you're going, this is it, I'm done. And every time that I've been there, there's a great scene. If you ever get to watch Four Feathers with, oh God, what's his name? He poor guy, he took a drug overdose in his mid-20s. And he also played in, anyway, he'll come to me. Anyway, there's a scene in the movie where he's in the desert. He goes to save his friends who've been captured by the Muslims, and he's in the desert, and a black Muslim man picks him up and saves him. And he says, "Why did you save me?" He says, "I'm your enemy." He goes, "Because God put you in my way." And at the end of the day, they go on this great adventure, and they free his friends, and they have to part ways. One's going one way, he's going the other, and he looks at him. It's a very touching moment because they're so close. And he says, "Where will you go now?" And he says, "Wherever God takes me." And in my darkest hours, that's what I say. I'm ready to go. Let's go. Where are you taking me?
Divine adventure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up because we've been talking for way over an hour. But great interview.
Thank you. Again, I think it's an honor. I'd love to come back anytime because I got a lot more stories, and and I just want to leave you with, believing is great, trusting is amazing, and I'm going to tell you this: it's not easy. It's the toughest juncture, right, Rebecca?
Right. Oh yeah.
When you get to that point and you got to jump. But again, I remember reading Kierkegaard, Fear and Trembling. I'm 20-something years old, and he's saying, you come to the edge of the cliff, you got to jump. You have to make the leap, and it's scary as hell. But somebody that I did, it's an amazing story in itself. She made the jump, and we did a podcast, and she said to me, I said, "That's the hard part." She says, "It's not hard after that. That is the hardest part. But after that, everything becomes effortless." Right. Yeah. Because you're in the flow. Exactly. And it all starts to work out once you've taken the leap. Yep. Okay. Exactly. Well, thank you so much. Tom. This was great. Yep. I hope it helped. And it did. It's nice to know, every day more and more light workers show up, thank God, because it's pretty dark out there right now. Yeah. And, one of the things that Rebecca and we help each other a day and say, we read another great book we read was Power versus Force, in which they talked about what's the difference between power and force. Force is things like guns and military and head games and control. And once you cross over, and he used a logarithmic scale, once you cross over into creativity and love and spirit, you're no longer dealing with force, you're dealing with real power. And the way we help each other say, all of this insanity that's going on right now will crumble because it's not using real power. And we're all powerful beings.
Right.
Unless we're a Jedi, then we're using the Force.
Yeah. I saw Joseph Campbell in that interview he did with Bill, I forget his name, but he says to him, he says, well, what do you say to people? You taught at Sarah Lawrence, and you had this, you were born to wealthy parents, and you had this education. He goes, look, he says, in my entire life, he says, I was surrounded by people who tried to control me, who tried to take my power. He says, and I will tell you this. So they showed the scene between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, where Darth Vader is saying to him, Luke, come to the dark side, Luke. Come to the dark side. He says, do you see why? He says, do you see? Because that whole story, Star Wars, was modeled after the hero's journey. He says, do you see why Darth Vader is in black? He represents evil. He represents the intellect. And he says, I will tell you now that if you ascribe to any group or any philosophy that elevates the intellect over your heart and your gut and your soul, you will have a schizophrenic crack up. And I will just say, what is America going through right now? A schizophrenic crack up. We're split like crazy, and people are nuts because everybody is using this, and they're not using it. Somebody else is manipulating it for them.
So true.
So true. So true.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Another little dot in our journey.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
See
you
you
so much,
soon.
Tom. So we
All right.
appreciate you, Tom, being here. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to share it with your friends and family, if you got something out of it,
This is going on my website for sure.
All right, I'll send you the link for sure once it's ready to go.
Thank you. God bless all of you people.
Bye-bye.
And nice to meet you and connect. I hope we connect many times.